All right, so today we're diving deep into the story of Samson.
Samson.
This guy's known for crazy strength, but but his life was way more complicated than just muscles and mayhem. You probably heard the highlights, right?
Yeah.
Fighting lions.
Of course.
That donkey jawbone incident.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole Delilah debacle.
Yeah.
But we're going beyond the what.
Right.
And exploring the why.
Yeah.
What really made Samson tick.
It's interesting to think about the backdrop of Samson's story.
Okay.
The Israelites are under Philistine rule.
Right.
And
tough times.
it's a tense time,
Yeah.
full of political and social pressure.
Yeah, no pressure in anything, right?
Right.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Samson wasn't just born into this mess.
Right.
He was set apart from birth.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
by the Nazirite vow.
Right.
No wine, no haircuts.
Yeah.
A lifetime of dedication to God.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
It's a big commitment.
What does that kind of commitment even do to a person?
Well, the vow wasn't just about outward rituals.
Right.
It was about shaping Samson's inner life, connecting him directly to God's purpose.
Okay.
It's a powerful concept.
Yeah?
Almost like being a living, breathing symbol of God's presence among the Israelites.
But talk about a double-edged sword.
Right.
On one hand, you're set apart.
Yeah.
Special.
Uh-huh.
Maybe even feeling invincible.
Right.
But on the other,
Yeah.
are you ever really free to just be yourself?
Yeah. This tension between Samson's human nature and his divine calling
Right.
is key to understanding his story.
Okay.
Take his famous encounter with the lion, for example.
Okay.
Most people would run for the hills.
Right.
But Samson, empowered by what the Bible calls the Spirit of the Lord.
Hold up. Spirit of the Lord.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean in this context?
Uh,
Like, is it a feeling?
Okay, so
Surge of adrenaline or something more mystical?
it's a powerful concept in the Old Testament. It's often described as God's active presence,
Uh-huh.
working through individuals,
Okay.
granting them wisdom, courage, or in Samson's case, extraordinary strength.
Okay, so back to the lion.
Right back to the
He
lion.
just tears it apart, no big deal.
Yeah,
But what I find fascinating is that he doesn't brag about it.
right.
Almost like it was so matter of fact to him.
Yeah.
Was it just another Tuesday for Samson?
Right.
Or is there something deeper going on there?
That lack of boasting is really intriguing.
Okay.
It suggests that for Samson, the strength wasn't about ego or personal glory.
Yeah.
It was a tool almost,
Right.
something given to him for a purpose beyond himself.
So maybe the vow wasn't just shaping his actions,
Yeah.
but also how he thought about himself and his abilities.
Yeah.
It's like his strength wasn't really his.
Yeah,
It was God working through him.
exactly.
But man, talk
Okay.
about pressure.
And this brings us to a point where Samson's human nature really starts to show.
Okay.
The riddle incident at his wedding. This seemingly harmless game
Right.
triggers a chain reaction of violence and revenge.
Yeah.
Revealing Samson's fiery temperament
Yeah.
and his tendency to react, well, let's say forcefully.
Seriously, this guy doesn't mess around.
No, he doesn't.
But putting aside his hot-headedness for a second,
Yeah.
isn't there something more here about the culture of the time?
Sure.
I mean, didn't revenge and justice kind of go hand in hand back then?
You're absolutely right.
Oh, okay.
We can't just look at Samson's actions in isolation.
Right.
We have to consider the historical context.
Okay.
The concept of an eye for an eye
Yeah.
was deeply ingrained in the societal fabric of that time.
Okay.
So while his actions might seem extreme to us today,
Yeah.
they were likely seen as justified,
Yeah.
even expected within that culture.
Makes you wonder if those cultural values fueled his own anger,
Yeah.
or maybe even justified it in his mind.
It's possible.
But things escalate even further in the jawbone incident.
Well, yeah.
A donkey jawbone taking down 1,000 Philistine soldiers.
It's a lot of Philistines.
Come on, that's straight out of a Hollywood action movie.
It's an image that certainly captures the imagination.
Yeah.
But if we look beyond the sheer spectacle,
Right.
it raises questions about resourcefulness,
Okay.
about faith trumping conventional weaponry.
So is this Samson simply being clever,
Right?
or is the Spirit of the Lord at play here again?
It's a good question.
Okay, so maybe the jawbone isn't just about the weapon itself,
Uh-huh.
but about what it represents.
Right.
Like even in his most human moments,
Yeah.
there's this hint of the divine woven through his actions.
It's there.
But that brings us to the other big player in this drama,
Okay.
Delilah.
Delilah.
And let's be real, this woman is trouble with a capital T.
Delilah represents a different kind of power.
Right.
The power of seduction, manipulation, and betrayal.
Yeah, she's not just a beautiful face.
Right.
She's a master manipulator.
Yeah.
Using her charm and wit to systematically weaken Samson.
It's a process.
And it's not like she just stumbles onto his secret.
Right.
She works for it.
Yeah, she's determined.
Which begs the question.
Yeah.
What's her motivation?
Uh-huh.
Is she just greedy?
Okay.
Or is there something more to her story?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for a good villain.
Sure.
But even villains have reasons, right?
That's what makes Delilah so fascinating.
Okay.
She's not just a cardboard cutout of a temptress.
Right.
She's a complex character with her own desires, ambitions,
Oh, yeah.
and perhaps even her own wounds.
So we've got this incredibly strong, divinely appointed hero
Yeah.
wrestling with his own humanity.
It's a struggle.
And we've got this captivating, cunning woman with her own agenda,
Right.
and their lives are about to collide in a way that will change everything.
It's a classic setup
Yeah.
for a story that explores the depths of human nature,
Okay.
the complexities of power, and the devastating consequences of betrayal.
All right, we've laid the groundwork here. Okay, we've got the backdrop, the key players,
Yeah.
and the big questions.
Sounds good.
But how does it all play out?
Right.
What happens when strength meets temptation? And what are the ultimate consequences of Samson's choices?
Yeah, those are the big questions.
We'll dive deeper into those questions right after this.
All right, sounds good. Welcome back. We left off with Samson, a man of immense strength,
Right.
but also deep-seated flaws,
Yeah.
about to cross paths with Delilah, a woman who embodies temptation and cunning.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, all this is happening against the backdrop of the Israelites struggling under Philistine rule.
Right.
Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
It's like Samson's personal struggles are mirroring the larger political turmoil of his people.
That's a great observation. You see, during this time, figures like Samson weren't just strong men. They were almost like divinely appointed warlords,
Right.
what the Bible calls judges,
Okay.
leading the Israelites in resistance against their oppressors.
So it's not just about personal beefs and love affairs.
Right.
It's about the fate of an entire nation resting on Samson's shoulders.
Exactly.
No pressure.
Right. Which makes his relationship with Delilah all the more tragic.
Right.
She's not just a woman scorned.
Yeah.
She's a symbol of how easily strength can be undermined by temptation,
Okay.
especially when it comes in the form of someone you trust.
Speaking of trust, let's talk about how Delilah goes about getting Samson's secret.
Okay.
It's not just a one-time trick.
Right.
It's a whole campaign of manipulation.
Yeah.
I mean, she tries multiple times,
She's persistent.
chipping away at his resolve, playing on his emotions.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about her?
It reveals a level of patience and strategic thinking that's almost chilling.
Okay.
Delilah is clearly intelligent and resourceful,
Uh-huh.
understanding how to exploit Samson's weaknesses.
Right.
His love for her, his pride,
Okay.
his sense of invincibility, perhaps.
Okay, but even if she's smart and manipulative, she's still motivated by something. What's in it for her?
Right.
Is she working for the Philistines? Is it revenge?
Or
Or just plain old greed?
The text is a little ambiguous about her exact motives,
Okay.
which makes her even more intriguing. Perhaps it's a mix of all those things.
Okay.
A desire for wealth, power,
Uh-huh.
maybe even a chance to strike a blow against the oppressors of her people.
So she might not be a straightforward villain,
Right.
but someone caught in the middle, playing a dangerous game with high stakes.
Yeah. It's a high stakes game.
And ultimately, Samson falls for it. He spills the secret of his strength,
Right.
his uncut hair, the symbol of his vow to God.
The source of his power.
It's heartbreaking, really, watching him succumb to her manipulations.
It's a classic tale of temptation and betrayal.
And the consequences are immediate and devastating. The Philistines capture Samson, shear off his hair, and imprison him.
Yeah, she loses everything.
It's a complete reversal of fortune,
Yeah.
a brutal fall from grace.
This moment highlights the cyclical nature of Samson's story. Bursts of divine power, followed by lapses in judgment and their painful repercussions.
So is this part of a larger plan?
Right?
Or is Samson simply a pawn in a cosmic game he doesn't fully understand?
It's a question that haunts his story.
It makes you wonder if he ever stops to think,
Yeah.
hey, maybe these bad things keep happening because I keep breaking my vow.
Right. He doesn't seem to learn from his mistakes.
But even in this moment of defeat,
Yeah.
there's a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
Remember the Spirit of the Lord.
Yes.
It hasn't completely abandoned him.
Not yet.
His hair starts to grow back.
Right.
And with it, the possibility of redemption.
That's a powerful symbol of renewal.
Which brings us to the grand finale. The scene in the Philistine temple.
Okay.
They're all there celebrating their victory, mocking their blind captive talk about adding insult to injury.
It's a scene filled with tension and anticipation.
Oh.
The Philistines believe they've broken Samson.
Right.
But they underestimate the depths of his despair and the lingering power of his connection to God.
And let's be real, they also underestimate how much this guy wants revenge.
Of course.
He's been humiliated, betrayed,
Yeah.
stripped of everything that made him special.
Right.
But before we get to the epic climax, I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
You called Samson a judge.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean?
That's a great question. In ancient Israel, judges weren't just legal figures.
Okay.
They were leaders, military commanders, even prophets in some cases.
Okay.
They were individuals chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from oppression.
So it's not just about Samson's personal struggles.
Right.
It's about his role in a much larger historical and spiritual narrative.
Exactly.
Okay, so back to the temple. He's blind, he's surrounded by enemies.
Right.
But he's got one last trick up his sleeve.
This final act is both tragic and triumphant.
Okay.
Samson, in his brokenness, calls out to God one last time.
All right.
Not for personal gain, but for the strength to strike a blow against his captors,
Okay.
to liberate his people.
And then with a surge of supernatural strength, he brings the whole temple crashing down.
It's an unforgettable image.
Killing himself and countless Philistines talk about going out with a bang.
It's a powerful ending.
But is it a victory, a suicide mission, or a desperate act of a broken man seeking a final act of defiance?
That's the complexity of Samson's story.
Okay.
It's open to interpretation.
So was it divine justice, a reckless act of revenge, or perhaps a final tragic fulfillment of his destiny? We'll explore these questions further when we return. All right, we're back, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around that ending. Samson brings the whole temple down, taking himself and a bunch of Philistines with him. It's a powerful image, but what are we supposed to make of it? Was this a heroic last stand, a tragic mistake, or something else entirely?
It's a moment that's sparked debate for centuries. Some see it as Samson finally understanding the true source of his strength, his unwavering faith, even as he loses his physical sight and earthly life.
So not just brute force, but a spiritual kind of strength that even imprisonment and betrayal couldn't extinguish. But doesn't that make his death even more tragic? Like, what if he had figured this out earlier? Could he have avoided all the pain and destruction?
That's a question that lingers, isn't it? It makes you wonder about the role of free will versus destiny in Samson's life. Was his path predetermined, or did his choices lead him inevitably to this dramatic end?
And let's not forget, this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate. Samson's actions have real-world consequences. He dies, a lot of other people die, and the cycle of violence between the Israelites and Philistines continues. So where does that leave us? Is Samson a hero, a cautionary tale, or something in between?
It's tempting to put people into neat categories, hero, villain, victim, but Samson resists easy labels. He's a mix of strength and weakness, faith and flawed humanity. And that's what makes his story so enduringly relevant.
Because it's a reflection of our own struggles, right? We all have moments where we feel powerful and invincible, and times when we make terrible choices driven by ego desire or just plain stupidity. It's comforting in a weird way to know that even a biblical hero struggled with the same things.
Exactly. Samson's story isn't just about one man's epic life and death. It's about the human condition itself. Our capacity for both great and terrible things, and the constant tension between our desires and our higher purpose.
But if we're going to get really deep here, shouldn't we talk about the elephant in the room? I mean, some of Samson's actions, especially towards women, are pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile those parts of his story with our modern sensibilities?
It's important to acknowledge that we're looking at this story through a 21st century lens. The cultural norms and values of ancient Israel were vastly different from our own, but that doesn't mean we have to condone or excuse those aspects.
Right. We can appreciate the complexity of the story without ignoring the problematic parts. In fact, maybe that's the most important takeaway, that even stories about heroes can challenge us to think critically and engage with uncomfortable truths.
I think that's a great point. Engaging with these stories, even the difficult parts, allows us to have conversations about morality, justice, and how we understand our own place in the world.
So what's the lasting legacy of Samson? What can we learn from this guy besides maybe not trusting someone who keeps asking you for the secret to your strength?
I think his story offers several enduring lessons. First, it reminds us that true strength isn't just about physical power. It's about resilience, faith, and the ability to tap into a source of power greater than ourselves.
Okay, that's deep. What else?
Second, it cautions us about the dangers of temptation and the importance of self-awareness. Samson's downfall wasn't just Delilah's doing, it was his own inability to recognize and resist his weaknesses.
And lastly, I think Samson's story reminds us that redemption is always possible, even in the face of our greatest failures. His final act, however flawed, was a testament to that.
Beautifully put. And perhaps that's the most enduring message of Samson's story, that even when we stumble, even when we make terrible mistakes, we can still choose to use our remaining strength for good.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the epic, messy, and thought-provoking story of Samson. We hope you've enjoyed this journey. It's a tale that continues to resonate across time, reminding us of the complexities of human nature, the power of faith, and the enduring possibility of redemption.
And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring, questioning, and diving deep into the stories that shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep the donkey jawbones handy. You never know when you might need one.